Attention gamers, attention. This is an announcement. The announcement is I am better than you. I know, it was pretty obvious before, but now it really is. Why? Well, I've 100% Sonic Adventure 2. Twice even. So in all reality, I have now been enlightened to a point nobody else has or will ever reach. I am basically the Sonic game Buddha and Jesus. So you may now bow to my Zen gamer skills. And hey, if you've also done this, well, la-dee-da, aren't you special for taking my thunder from me? But for real, you're epic too. Maybe later we meet up behind the dumpster near Sega headquarters, make out a little bit, cop a fee. But in all seriousness, I mean, at least in whatever seriousness the topic of 100%ing a 20-year-old Sonic game deserves, which is all of the seriousness in the world, this means more than anything, I've noticed this weird status this game's 100% completion has become. Multiple other YouTubers have made videos about it, it's become a small trend for nostalgic losers like me, and a lot of people see it as this weird thing only idiots do. Why? Well, it's for a couple reasons, which of course I'll be getting into, but first, a question. Why do you 100% games? For me, I don't 100% that many, but when I do, it almost always has to do with either collectibles or content. For content, a lot of games require you to finish everything in order to unlock everything. Mario Kart, for example. In Double Dash, for every kart and character, every Grand Prix on every difficulty must be completed. So of course, if I want all my options, I'm gonna get everything done. Then there's the collectible variety, mainly in platformers and the like. I want to get everything because it's the only way to truly see every single inch of the game. To get every nook and cranny, every challenge, the full experience, I want to get everything. I need to collect everything. I think there's a lot to be gained from that mindset specifically. Take Donkey Kong 64. When I did everything in that game, it was because I really wanted to see what every bit of that game would be like with the specific mod I was using. I didn't want to miss a beat. If there was an experience to be had, I wanted it. And it simultaneously gave me a better outlook and kind of a worse one. I felt sometimes the mini games were a waste of time, but on the other hand, there were so many fun, smart platforming challenges that I didn't regret it at all. On the other hand, there's Mario Sunshine. While I do think there's merit to getting every shine, at the same time, doing all of these optional missions requires fully experiencing how awful the physics engine is, how often the game hits you with frustrating bullshit, and how much you miss moves like the long jump. And that brings us to today's subject, Sonic Adventure 2. The main reason I think it's become a popular challenge to do everything is that there's just so many levels, missions, and requirements. But it's also that the game requires you to get A ranks, which unlike future games is actually pretty difficult, requiring near perfect runs in order to earn them. And why would you want to do that in a game as notoriously aged and frustrating as SA2, right? Well, because in my experience, you kind of realize how good the game is. Obviously, it's not perfect, but I'm not kidding when I say getting A ranks in stages truly requires you to familiarize yourself with every level, every gameplay style, and every challenge in ways you wouldn't have before. In ways I definitely never did as a kid. Don't get me wrong, the ways this game defined me as a child and as a human being are simultaneously immense and humiliating. But when I got older, that love faded. I thought it was way worse than SA1 and that it just wasn't for me. But in 2020, because I guess I had nothing better to do for some reason, I decided I would get every emblem. And I'm not kidding, because I had to perfect it, because I learned so much more about the game than I ever knew before, it became one of my favorites in the series. And that's why I'm talking about this game before I talk about 100%ing SA1, which I have also done. 100% completion makes you realize depth where you really wouldn't have seen any before. It makes you appreciate gameplay styles you might not have, and it truly opens up the game in ways I never imagined. So that's going to be the point of this video, going over my opinions as I once again 100% the game to get the experience fresh in my memory, giving a couple tips, a few warnings, and really digging into why I find it all so special. And here's how we're going to go about that. To 100% complete this game, you need 180 emblems. You get one emblem for each level, plus one for every mission on those levels, plus one per level for getting all the A ranks, plus a couple extraneous ones for side modes, and you also get 3 for completing each story mode. I will be going over each different gameplay style, encompassing the emblems from my least favorite to absolute favorite, and I'll be highlighting describing the pros and cons of each one while also explaining why they mean so much to me. I'll do my best to go into specific details or certain levels, but I can't promise I'll touch on everything because I have only so much attention span before the next shiny object distracts me. But first, a couple overall opinions that could fit into any single part of this. First, I legitimately think one thing that majorly helps with this game is its fantastic controls. There's outliers, but for the most part, not only are their controls precise, they are very smooth. The momentum-based adventure style gameplay has never really been topped outside of this game, and it is wonderful. Even the mechs, despite being more sluggish, never control unpredictably. Once you have the hang of them, it works exceptionally well, and I think that's what's going to help you through the process most. Everything about this game's controls feels amazing. I'm going to bring this up a lot in this video, but this game expects perfection. And if a game does that, I expect it in turn. And while this game does occasionally fail to bring it, the controls are never the culprit. Speaking of which, most main levels of this game do require perfect runs. This is because rank is dependent on score, which needs to hit a certain threshold by the end of each level. These require high ring counts, tons of enemy kills, and potentially doing extra tricks or paths while going fast enough to get a hefty time bonus by the end of the level. It also needs to be done in one life, as if you die, your score will reset. This is probably the biggest ask of the A ranks, because perfect runs sound daunting. But here's what I'll say. Be patient. It is more than possible to A rank every level. I've done it twice and I suck at video games. The more you try, the more familiar you'll be with a level, the more you'll find new ways to get through it, and the better you will do. Even just doing missions, you'll learn more. The 100 ring missions might help you find certain areas and secrets or push you to find ways to speed up a path. The hidden Chao missions require you to find the mystic melody in certain stages, which will require you to learn a stage, of course, but you need to use it on these pillars, which also require stage knowledge to find. And both of those missions just about always have very easy A rank time requirements. The time attack missions have the same point requirements as normal stages for A ranks, so it can give you a good idea on just how fast you're expected to go through a level, and you can improve more within that time frame. And hard mode tends to usually be a spin on the pre-existing level that just tests your reactions to a few new obstacles in a level you've played multiple times now. The game will naturally lead you to learn more, so don't get frustrated. It is almost always a matter of you simply getting better, which will be rewarded with those juicy A ranks. And it's a process. Sometimes you're just on a roll, just like, oh yeah, I'm ranking it. But then you turn into a constant stream of God damn it. Come on. Are you kidding? Oh, there it is. Just know that it is incredibly rewarding to master these stages and gameplay styles. And for one final disclaimer, I did use some mods in this playthrough. Almost entirely graphical fixes, but one gameplay change for the treasure hunting, which I will get into more down the line. Modding the game is incredibly easy, but not at all required. The only reason I did it here was for better visuals, slightly tweaked gameplay, and the ability to edit the audio levels. The main game does not have that option, and if you know anything about these Sonic re-releases, audio mixing tends to be hideous, with music drowning out voice acting and sound effects drowning out both. This let me edit them for my own pleasure, and I will link the incredibly easy to use mod loader in the description, which comes with the one gameplay modification I use pre-packaged. Most mods that I'm using nowadays, though, are honestly just for the Chao Garden on my own time, but I'll slightly touch on that later on. Let's actually talk about each individual gameplay style, starting with Okay, fine, I'll talk about it. But this mode just should not be here. Like, look, it's not the worst thing ever. In fact, the actual kart race mode is insanely easy to get the emblems from. But not only does it have absolutely nothing to do with the normal gameplay styles of the game, it is such an optional side thing that I don't understand the point of it being required for 100%. It's like if Mario 64 DS required playing the extra minigames for 100%. It would be dumb. But I mean, at best, it's harmless. Until you get into the two story levels, oh my God, these are so insanely frustrating. Getting A ranks isn't that bad. In fact, it's fun fully mastering these weird controls and tracks, but these two missions, holy shit. Funnily enough, I only struggled on one each for each character, but these are infuriating. Don't hit the cars. Oh my God, who play tested this? The cars move erratically. They'll put you in tight spaces with them where it won't let you go around them, and you are on a strict time limit. And considering the way the car's control is either way too stiff or incredibly incredibly slippery, it is never comfortable to even drive slightly past them. Then these dumbass wall missions. Look, you don't want to hit walls in general because that ruins your time, but making even the slightest graze that wouldn't slow you down normally into a death sentence is ridiculous. Again, it doesn't feel like anyone playtested this to make sure it's fun. Threading these tiny ass needles with controls not built for it is a recipe for broken controllers. It's these two missions that put this mode at the bottom. No, it shouldn't have any emblems, but at least the normal kart races take all of 10 minutes total and are inoffensive. These missions, however, no. I can't stand them. They're the only part of the 180 emblem experience that are completely unfun to do. Although I will say the contrast between the catchy upbeat music and my irrational gamer rage was very funny. Also, some of this footage I got while super hammered, so drunk driving probably didn't help my case. Anyways, on to the good stuff. Alright, so I'm sure when I brought this forward jokingly a minute ago, the two of you who watch my videos thought it was insane for me to put the Chao Garden this low. But let me explain. First off, literally everything in this game, minus those 4 missions in kart racing, is fun in some way, shape, or form. The quality jump between kart racing and the Chao Garden is massive. Second, as I've explained, the true enjoyment I get from getting every emblem is from my improvement at the game, from mastering each level and gameplay mechanic. But in the Chao Garden, you can't really do that. Chao races and karate are both automated, which is fine if you're raising Chao and unlocking items for them, but if you're only doing it for emblems, it's kind of a slog. The best way to get the emblems is just get 2 Chao, 1 hero, and 1 dark, or just 1 neutral if you're not an idiot and you remember that neutral Chao can do every race, and just jack those stats up using the animal glitch before stomping every competition. It's a slog. It doesn't let you experience the depth and true enjoyment of the mode, and while raising Chao will always have positive qualities to it, when you're only doing it for completion, it loses a lot of them, especially because these races are just excessive. You have to do each one 3 to 5 times on every difficulty, then the challenge, hero, and dark races are almost always on the same map, the longest one, which goes on for upwards of 3 minutes. I got so sick of seeing the same track so many times that it kind of went from a nice way to end my playthrough to a tedious multiple hour slog that I mostly would have going on in the background while I would do chores around my house. These things are supposed to be done slowly, as you're supposed to gradually raise Chao and have them take things down one at a time, but because they tied emblems to it, that's not really how you're going to play them. I'd recommend doing this last. I do think that after going through so many levels and perfecting each and every one, the ability to just relax while you watch the Chao you raise stomp every challenge is pretty neat, even though for me, as someone who just wanted the last of his footage, it was pretty dull. Again, this is not a criticism of the Chao Garden, just the emblems it holds. In fact, raising these 2 Chao, Larmo and Teeth, honestly got me back into Chao raising for the first time since I was little. And if you thought the normal game of Sonic Adventure 2 had mods, you have not seen shit. With mods, the Chao Garden goes from having hundreds of potential hours of content to literally infinite. As I'm writing this, it's got its hooks in me hard. I have 15 Chao, I've bred multiple special Chao, and my current goal is to get Larmo, Teeth, and a neutral Chao I raised right after, Wii, to become Chaos Chao. This is a video for another time, and maybe even something for live streams, but to reiterate, the Chao Garden is a ton of fun with a mountain of depth, but for 100% completion, it's just about raising one's stats and stomping everything. Yeah, this counts as a separate mode. Getting emblems here is different from normal gameplay. There's no ranking, no time requirement. Hell, you can even lose lives and there's no punishment. The reason it's so low is honestly just because it's kind of tedious. See, you get 1 gauntlet for the hero story, 1 for the dark, and 1 that does all those plus the 2 bio lizard fights. And you know, I actually do find that this game has quality boss fights for the most part. The Walker fights, the final fight with Sonic and Shadow, King Boom Boo because he goes and you can never get me to hate this final boss. But the issue is the rival fights, because these range from literally nothing to janky and irritating. As one-off little events in the story, they're fine, but the major problem is that you do them so many times here. Because in each story, you do these fights from both sides. You're effectively fighting each one twice, and then factoring in that last rush 4 times. Yeah, you have to do each rival fight again here. The issue with this mode isn't that it's necessarily bad, it's just by the time I'm doing that stupid Knuckles and Rouge fight for the 4th time in the last 40 minutes, I'm a bit burnt out. Similar to the Chao Garden, I'd recommend saving this for the end. It's something you can do with your brain off without demanding too much from you. Yes, this game does count this as a separate gameplay style. The evidence being when you complete every character's levels with A ranks, the game rewards you by calling you a genius. But none of those require Cannon's Core to get them. However, unlike the last 3 sections, this one not only does have A ranks to get, but it's also very fun. Originally, I kind of dreaded this level. I expected it to be super long and retries to be a nightmare, but honest to God, this is one of the only levels where the game gives you safety nets. If you die within a section, you keep whatever score you entered with and time resets to what it was originally. So if you die during the Sonic portion, that's fine. You can just try the section again. It also helps that this honestly isn't even one of the longest levels in the game. It's not short by any means, but an A rank run won't take you more than around 7 minutes, and the obstacles you face are never too frustrating or difficult. I think this game's A ranks are most fun when it's these gauntlets of challenges that really put your skills to the test, and this level is a choice one for that. It tests your platforming and shot timing and mechs, how well you can navigate and swim with the hunting gameplay, and Sonic's portion is linear, yes, but it's one last platforming challenge to make sure you've gotten it all down. What's truly fun though are these missions. The 100 rings one is neat because while yeah, it's short, the fact that the rings aren't all going to be in one section makes it a lot more enjoyable. I would hate it if it were all done with just Tails. The timed run is all of that mastery put to use, even more so than the hard mode. It really makes you figure out how to make the most out of your swimming speed, along with testing how well you know those weird ass moving blocks. But more than all of them, this is the only level where I adore finding that lost Chao. It's based on using the Mystic Melody, of course, but instead of just shoving one in the final area, they spread each pillar throughout different parts, and when you play it in one area, you don't see what it does until entering the next section. It's taken the idea of each character doing their part to get to the core, but instead of just platforming, it's changing the level itself, asking you to find those changes, then passing along more Mystic Melodies until you've unlocked a single trail of Lightspeed dash rings. Fantastic, a perfect reflection of the level itself, and the smartest Lost Chao location, period. I think getting every emblem really helped me appreciate this level a lot more. Before, I was never a huge fan. I thought it was too long, too linear, and just kind of annoying. But once mastered, it becomes a picture where each piece fits more and more until honestly, it became a highlight. The only reason it's not higher is because it's just a single level, and more of a culmination of the game rather than an actual gameplay style. But this is where the game modes really start to get fantastic when it comes to full completion. Holy shit, after like 4,000 words, we're actually getting to the meat of this thing. And I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why I'd ever consider putting this below treasure hunting stages. And we will for sure get to that more in the next section, but this gameplay style does have certain moments that hold it back from hitting the heights of the other gameplay styles. But that doesn't mean for a second that these levels aren't fun. The main focus of getting A ranks in these stages isn't as time reliant as other stages. While yes, the time bonus at the end is helpful, there's multiple stages here that you don't even need a single point of it to win. This is because the A ranks in this style really show how much of an evolution from Sonic Adventure 1's Gamma gameplay these are. In SA1, Gamma's levels were centered around shooting as many targets as possible in large chains to refill your timer, where here, you're still encouraged to do that, but the difference is you're no longer filling a timer. These levels aren't on a time limit. You have unlimited time to burn through them, so there's not a massive reason to get big target bonuses anymore in normal play, which feels extra weird considering how much longer the target beam lasts in this game compared to the last one. And I did originally feel like that made the levels feel undercooked, like they introduced improvements only for them to not feel like they mean much. That is, if you're playing normally. This is the first big change you feel when going for A ranks. These massive combo chains aren't for time, they aren't for anything when playing normally, but they are the key to A ranks. You can rack up so many points just by getting high target combos that in certain levels like Cosmic Wall, you'll have an A rank score without any time bonus. This is where this gameplay style truly shines. I think without A ranking, this gameplay style is fine, a little slow and kind of clunky, but here it all comes together. You realize that these levels are full shooting galleries, where many obstacles aren't set up to impede progress, they're there to break your combo. Those sections in certain levels where there's a couple enemies, an empty gap, then one more, that's not level designers being weird, that's encouraging you to take a gamble and see if you can make it that far within one lock-on chain. The elevator sections in a level like Iron Gate. Sure, you can go with what the elevator gives you and get a couple 4 or 5 combos, or you could be like the real gamers and fucking yeet yourself down, hitting every target at once but risking a death and a restart. The game even teaches you about doing that later on with these long falls with occasional enemies in later levels. Instead of stopping with the boosters, try just locking on as you fall. Again, bigger risk and higher reward. It makes the pace of these levels far better, as you're never going to be sitting still, even in levels like Weapons Bed or Prison Lane with enemies and stuff to shoot everywhere. It's worth figuring out an ideal line so that either you can get multiple max chain bonuses or knock out massive swaths of enemies for doors while also hitting optional ones. I will say this does mean the golden robots do mean less. Oh shit, I forgot to mention those. The golden robots are one of the most important and consistent parts of every single level. Each level has a golden robot that gives you a pretty big point bonus, but are either hidden, teleport away fast, or both. You have to kill them quickly the second you see them for that point bonus, and they are very important to a lot of different levels. But in the mech stages, they're just another robot to hit that doesn't even give you that big of a bonus. But even they have some genius design in them, as normally killing them is as simple as seeing them, but you could add them into an already existing chain and risk them disappearing for an even meatier score bonus. It also makes the level design feel a lot more purposeful. When I was younger, I would use things like the air hover to skip over platforming chunks I didn't want to do, and it felt like the game just didn't account for it. But with A ranks, it feels like the game is encouraging you to do it. You can fit way more enemies into a chain if you skip platforming or moving platforms, save way more time, potentially hit ring balloons, all of it, to the point where it no longer feels like you're exploiting something. Instead, it feels like the game is encouraging you to go for it. Because for an A rank, you have to go through the level in one life. Those go from skips to potential moments of being kicked back to the start of the stage. So you have to consider whether it's a smart move or not. Do you need those extra points, or are you safe enough to play the level normally? I think that without completion, these stages tend to be something you just blast through. They're pretty linear, and while fun, they aren't that special. But with maxing out your score in mind, you really start to see the insane depth that's here. How these were always meant to be score attacks, and how the complexity is in its risk versus reward mechanics, along with mastering the controls and beam timing to make the most out of each button press. It's not just an extra gameplay style, it's something with legitimate thought put into it, and one that you won't see if you don't go for emblems. And while some might see that as hiding something great, I see it as giving someone who isn't willing to engage with the systems an easy ride, while giving those who are willing to engage with it a lot more to chew on and a lot more skill to hone. However, as mentioned before, it ain't perfect. It's got some major flaws in certain areas that do hold it back, that being level design and platforming. And what I mean by that is Tails. For some reason, Tails' levels tend to be a bit more claustrophobic. They tend to have way more tight platforming and way more irritating enemy placements, and what I can only refer to as basically jump scares. See, you have a random enemy drop in front of Sonic or Knuckles, no big deal. You're going so fast and you control so perfectly you can quickly adjust and keep moving. But the mechs specifically have a hard time changing direction. And honestly, that's not a huge deal most of the time. It doesn't feel unnatural, it feels like you're controlling a heavy piece of machinery. And it's not like it's a snail's pace, there's just a bit of delay. However, when you just start plopping enemies right in front of me, it gets annoying. And because Tails has more claustrophobic design, it happens a bit more often than I would like. Eggman tends to have much more open levels, much more forgiving platforms, even when above bottomless pits. And he also gets Cosmic Wall, the best level for both platforming and risk versus reward level design. Where Tails, even in his levels that aren't bad, tends to get much worse levels out of the two with a lot more frustrating design. And look, I know Tails originally wasn't planned to be playable, but his levels are finished. It's not like they're slapped together, so I think that his levels might have just had a slightly different design philosophy to Eggman's. There are good ones. I like Prison Lane quite a bit. It's fast, has a ton to lock onto, and is an amazing introduction to his gameplay style. I also think Eternal Engine is one of the most fun in the game to master. Instead of the random enemy attacks, most of the hazards can only be activated by you, most likely on accident, or if you're going for A ranks, on purpose, because the hazards actually give you points. It's a really smart level, and one that I think is pretty underrated. However, there's Mission Street. Fuck this level. It's weirdly designed, has way too much vertical platforming on a gameplay style with a ton of forward momentum and weight, and it's the most guilty with these enemy spawns. It also goes on way too long, so if you're caught off guard at the last second, oops! Go back again. The missions are also at their weakest here. They just don't feel as cleverly implemented. Rings are spread out a lot in these stages, so the 100 ring missions give you a ton of time for A ranks. The Lost Chow pillar is typically in very open and obvious spots due to how the levels are designed, and the time limit missions tend to be very generous. Hard mode, however, can eat my ass. I hate it. Normally the more aggressive enemies aren't a big deal when you're moving so fast, but here I feel like they weren't tested enough with this gameplay style in mind. Enemies just spam shots over and over. You get split seconds where they won't be, and in something so bulky and heavy, it is irritating to dodge while getting enough targets. Keep in mind, if you fire off your attacks, then get hit before every enemy in the chain is dead, you lose that combo, whether it was enemies or just objects. It feels like the balance of risk and reward is completely lopsided now, because here I'll rarely risk getting more than like 2 or 3 targets at a time because I don't feel like getting sniped. It's at its worst with weapons bed because this level gets really strict with its score requirement, and it spawns enemies behind you along with way ahead, so you have a good chance of getting sniped by something you couldn't see while trying to get these batches of robots and jets. Even worse if you get hit after firing. Not all of these missions are bad, mind you. I can't really think of any that really set me off besides weapons bed, but it definitely doesn't help Mission Street, let's put it that way. This stuff isn't a game killer by any means. These levels are still great, and getting A ranks still very much makes you appreciate each one more. It's just the only reason it's my least favorite of the 3 main gameplay styles is due to the fact that it has the most levels I dislike, and it is the only mode with an entire group of missions that I'm not a fan of. As I've said, A ranks in this game tend to require perfection and game knowledge, and these levels absolutely do, but hard mode expects that perfection without really giving it back, and honestly, most of these levels are pretty easy to A rank. I know this is my second time around, but I was surprised with just how many I got A ranks on in my first try. I would say if you already liked these levels, getting every emblem will probably make you appreciate them even more, and if you disliked them, you'll find a lot more depth and strategy than you might have realized. It's the main gameplay style with the most flaws, but it is still a great time. See, now this is the one. This is the gameplay style that people can't fucking stand. Probably the most consistently dunked on levels, and most people who do like it for the reasons others hate it. That being, these levels are massive. They're cool to get lost in, they look neat, but they take forever to find every emerald piece, and how are you even supposed to do it fast enough for an A rank? Well, 2 things. This is where my mods came in. The only quote-unquote cheating mod I used was one to make the emerald radar the same as it was in Sonic Adventure 1, where every emerald in a level can be detected at all times instead of just one, and it makes these levels so much better. Second, why do you think I would enjoy these levels when I'm in a mindset of perfecting my gameplay while also gaining as much knowledge of each level as possible? Yeah, but I want to talk about that mod and why, if you can, you should absolutely use it. These levels are actually pretty well designed because while yes, they're massive, all of their sections will be visually distinct, easily recognizable. I think it takes a bit of time to memorize them, especially with levels like Aquatic Mine and the 2 pyramid stages. They can be a bit hard to figure out, and we will get to you. But the issue is you can only track 1 emerald piece at a time normally, which sucks. These levels are way too big for that shit to fly. You could go around the entire thing, finally find the one you were tracking, then, oh, you actually went past both of the other ones. And if you just knew about them, you could have gotten an A rank easily. Level knowledge does help as you can remember the different spots in which emeralds appear, but this just feels mean. It's the main part of the game that I just don't understand the choice. I can get behind a lot of this game's weirder aspects, but this just feels like an oversight. I have A ranked all of these normally on the GameCube, and they do have their qualities, but that frustration of accidentally passing emeralds you know you could have gotten never leaves. You can't perfect a level if you don't have all the information, which is why this one little change is a miracle worker. Does it make it easier? Sure, but it's only easier because now the game isn't hiding shit from you that it didn't need to hide. You're still searching for pieces. You still need to understand and know each level inside and out, and you still need to master the tools the game gives you. If you think that all of that isn't enough and that without the original SA2 radar the game is worse, fine. But honestly, I'm glad I don't know you personally because that is a huge red flag. But outside of the improvement, what is the draw of these levels? What does A ranking it change compared to normal play? Not a ton, but the couple things it adds are huge. First off, getting points in these levels is simultaneously easy and hard. There aren't a lot of enemies or rings around, so points from them are limited. And obviously there's time bonuses, and we'll get to that, but it seems like the only way to get points would be to waste time finding enemies. But what's genius is most of your points come in 3 big chunks. Those being the 3 big chunks the entire level is based around. Basically, the faster you get each piece, the less hints you use, the more points each emerald will be worth, with getting all 3 at their max worth basically guaranteeing you an A rank. On paper, it's the easiest A ranks in the game, but that only comes with level knowledge. Take Pumpkin Hill. This level is the first massive Knuckles level, and it can be really daunting, but as someone who's played it many times, I have a loose knowledge on where each emerald will show, and I know how to get from area to area fast. So getting each emerald goes from being lost to a frantic runaround checking each area I have good knowledge of until I see that detector go off. I used to hate Security Hall as a kid. That stupid time limit would stress me out, but it is an insanely well-designed level, having only 2 main areas which are both pretty small, meaning the radar will be beeping basically the second you enter an area. The level goes from overly stressful to legitimately well-paced, as it isn't actually asking much of you. Meteor Herd is that, but on a much larger scale. If you know the main areas well enough, exploring them doesn't take that long, and while yeah, it can be a challenge, considering it's Knuckles' last level, I think it's a fair one. What I think legitimately helps that level knowledge are the extra missions. Finding 100 rings here is less about the individual rings and more about the large ring packs, which tend to be hidden in areas you might not have known you could search. It gives you reason to use things like the treasure scope or sunglasses, items I would have never thought to use otherwise. If you're struggling to A rank the normal stage, try those 100 ring missions. They legitimately aid you in level knowledge just as much as a normal run would. The hidden chow are similar, just in different ways. More than likely, you'll find the melody pillar when you're not even in the mission, but you'll take mental notes of where it is, and that's you intrinsically gaining level knowledge and how to get to specific areas. That's kind of genius. The time attack missions are your first real test in how well you know the levels, because you already needed to be fast for an A rank, but here you have to actively know your shit so you don't lose. I love doing these levels fast. You feel like you've fully overcome a challenge the game has given you. And hard mode is honestly more of a victory lap and one final lesson on what the level could offer. Hard mode pieces will always be in the same spots. The trick is just learning how to get to those spots, as many are out of the way or require the treasure scope. Again, an item I didn't think the game used originally. It shows how intelligently designed each level is, and honestly, with that level knowledge, these levels fly by. You'll be A ranking every mission in one of them in under an hour. Oh. Yeah, here we go. This one breaks every rule. It is far too big. Even if you have the level memorized, which I at least like to think I do at this point, it's so big that even if the emerald is on one of the planets that you're standing on, there's a chance the radar won't even beep, and that includes with my mods on. Without the mods, you're better off just visiting every area you know an emerald could appear on and crossing your fingers. That's what I did originally when I 100% this game, because the fact that you're in such a massive level where you can spend minutes without a single beep is so unbelievably frustrating. The missions can help, sure, but what sucks about Mad Space is that level knowledge ceases to matter and it just feels like dumb luck most of the time. Not only that, but the controls take a massive nosedive. One thing about the treasure hunting levels that also assist in their fun is how well they control. Knuckles and Rouge might just have the smoothest controls in the whole game. They're fast, fluid, responsive, and every action just feels so good to pull off. Here, nah. The weird gravity stuff changes what your control stick does at complete random. So something as simple as jumping in a straight line, walking forward, turning around, it's a nightmare. The hard mode also sucks. The pieces are set in place, yeah, but one of them is literally so far away with a treasure scope spring that there's a chance the radar won't even tell you you're near it, meaning it's best if you just use a guide, which is lame. Mad Space is a lot like the other things I've had issues with, where it's an idea that's decent on paper, but I feel like it didn't have as much thought put into it in execution as it needed, which sucks because outside of Mad Space, A ranking these stages is excellent. Like I said, they control like a dream. Exploring these levels is fast and fun, and the way the missions teach you about each of the levels is genius. These are things you can easily miss if you don't go for 100%. The levels go from slogs to highlights. When I was a kid, I despised them. I just wanted to run fast or blow shit up, not get lost or confused, but as an adult, I appreciate them so much more because their design is legitimately smart. It's one of those things where when you don't have game knowledge, I can see how they would be frustrating. But when you go for all of the emblems, when you perfect them, these levels are some of the best in the game. I said in the last section that I got frustrated because the game wanted perfection from me, but wouldn't always give it back. But here, it does give it back. It never expects you to deal with anything outrageous or unfair, and it simultaneously feels controlled, but also like you're always one-upping it, except for Mad Space. Unironically, if Mad Space didn't exist, I would like these levels as much as the next gameplay style, but this is the worst level in the game. A-ranking the normal level feels like you're pulling the lever on a slot machine and hoping they show up in spots you know of. Again, it's one level out of around 31, so it's not a deal breaker. I just would heavily recommend maybe doing it early, because every other treasure hunting stage will give you a much better time. I didn't even mention the golden robots. These are hidden pretty well, but very easy to kill, so the challenge is just made to make you explore and learn even more for those extra points. It's even more smart design stacked on top of already smart design. These levels are great. One sucks, but it is the gameplay style that getting every emblem in will really make you change your outlook on. Yeah, I'm not shocking anybody. In the base game, these are the highlights. As a kid, they were my absolute favorite and the reason I became obsessed with this game. But as an adult, I started to like them less. I saw them as a lot more linear than the stages in SA1. They had a lot more impressive spectacle, but that's not really what I was looking for in my Sonic games. Until I decided to go for A ranks. Getting A ranks in these levels changes your mindset entirely, but not in the same way as the last two modes. For the mech stages, it'll help you see the depth and potential fun. For the hunting stages, it'll help you appreciate the smart level designs, but here, the levels don't necessarily change. They don't necessarily get less linear, but you realize what they were made for. They were made for you to master them. You realize that each section has ways to shave off a little bit more time, that there's ways to chain homing attacks together in spots you didn't expect it, that there's places to just launch yourself, cross your fingers and hope you land somewhere. It is some of the most fun Sonic level design ever, with some of the most solid controls ever, so let's dig in a little bit. These stages vary between two styles, more linear obstacle courses and stages with multiple paths. Let's start with the linear. These I feel like improve most from the A ranks, because you'll get lower ranks and just wonder, how the hell are you supposed to do better? But that's the thing. If the obstacle course is linear, how do you make that line better? Maybe chain a couple enemies more than you thought? Can you do a neat skip with a spin dash? What exactly did you miss before? It's less about some magic secret and more of just knowing what's ahead and tackling it faster and faster until you get that rank. Add to it those fantastic controls. Even though Sonic and Shadow go really fast, you never feel like you're gonna lose control of that speed. Everything is manageable, and if something is a surprise, it's not in a frustrating way, and more of placed in a way that you'll make a mental note of for a future run. The spin dash launches you in the air with good timing, but it's never unpredictable. In that short time between charging and launching with game knowledge, you'll know exactly where it's sending you to and what to do. You memorize each section, and if you fail that A rank, you can immediately think back on what to change. Take the first levels that both Sonic and Shadow get, Speed Highway and City Escape. Both are linear. Both seem easy, but both will most likely shock you with a B rank or lower. So you go back, realize you can go even faster down these hills, realize the ideal paths to do the best tricks on the skating ramps, realize you can do those homing attacks faster. You can be ready for when those gold robots pop up to snipe them immediately. You can realize when and where each enemy will show up, delaying the homing attack for slightly more distance to extend your chain. And once you finally got every little section down, obviously you're not a master speedrunner, I assume, but you finally feel like you got this level down better than the average person. Metal Harbor is one of the most maligned levels when it comes to A ranks, because the method that guarantees A rank is really hard. You have to get to the higher level of this rocket, and if you fuck up, that's the whole level again. But upon those replays, you notice free enemy kills you might not have seen before. You figure out those extra light speed dash rings, you micromanage and nail every moment a bit better, and you realize, after not only this level but the other levels you've played, what exactly your moveset will allow you to do. When I originally played this, I actually didn't do the extra high rocket part because I just couldn't, but now I know how far my spin dash can launch me. I can skip basically the entire first section and hit that higher bar somewhat consistently. It's not just mastering the level, it's mastering the controls, knowing exactly what to do and when to do it. The more open levels are also really fun. Skyrail is one of my favorites. The fact that every side of each mountain has hidden paths with stuff to find to up your score is so fun. Launching yourself off rails to skip different sections will never get old, and it really emphasizes why this game's grinding is so fun. It's not automated like in the boost games. It's not whatever happened in Sonic Heroes or Shadow the Hedgehog. It is completely momentum based, and you can legitimately get good at it. You'll know when it's safe to crouch for more speed, when you should jump off early, and unlike a game like Sonic Heroes, jumping between rails is actually a thing the game lets you do, except in Final Rush, which I'll probably get to. White Jungle has so much more to it than you would initially expect. So many other paths, so many ways that could be faster but might be riskier. It's short, but you never feel like you've truly seen everything in it. What's amazing is how none of them ever lose a sense of speed. If anything, they just get faster as you play, because less and less obstacles will be halting your momentum. And there is no levels in the game that exemplify that more than Final Rush and Final Chase. Final Rush has one flaw, in that these two rails are positioned weird, so jumping between them sometimes doesn't work. It's the only time this has happened to me in this game, and I cried a lot. But these levels are so much more open. They have tons of ways to do each section, with multiple ways to try to skip some and save off time. They test how fast you can take out enemies, how well you know the platforming. They even test air control, as if you're good enough, you can just leap over sections without touching the ground. They are also some of the strictest with their A ranks. I'd say speed stages are by far the hardest to A rank, but these ones really expect you to know what you're doing and take risks to potentially grab extra rings or shave off seconds. Final Rush especially took me multiple tries, but it never stopped being exhilarating. Never stopped feeling like the problem was me, that the game wasn't screwing me over, it was expecting perfection and I hadn't perfected it yet. The missions are also great. 100 rings is pretty easy, but the time attacks are the real winners. These have the same point requirements for A ranks, as I've said, and with other gameplay styles, that's easy, but here, the game basically says, good job getting that A rank before. Now do it faster. And you realize how much more potential these levels have to squeeze out. Hard mode actually changes certain level designs, the difficulty not coming from anything cheap or annoying, just asking you to play the level well again, just this time with different obstacles and enemies. It never feels like it wasn't planned for. It doesn't feel unfair. It always feels like an opportunity to improve. The only thing close to an exception is Crazy Gadget, because it's kind of a clusterfuck. I don't like anti-gravity in games usually, and here it doesn't fuck with your controls like in Mad Space. It just overstays its welcome and the level is way too long. And in hard mode, you can fuck up during that last puzzle and be forced to restart the whole thing just for another shot at that end puzzle. The hidden Chao here also kind of suck. You're trying to go at a crazy fast pace and rack up points, so looking around for the pillars isn't really what you're normally gonna do. And they're either laughably easy to find or what the fuck. They aren't bad, they're just the weakest missions of the bunch. The speed stages in this game are indeed more linear than they are in Sonic Adventure 1, but if you ask me, it's because they're more deliberate. They want you to be perfect, to improve and improve on each different section of a level, and are designed in a much more intentionally challenging way. Originally, I preferred Sonic Adventure 1's levels, but now I vastly prefer these ones. I want to push them to their limits and be pushed in turn. I am still finding ways to play them better each time I go back, and I think that's something legitimately special because Sonic games aren't the same anymore. The boost formula has similar levels, but here, getting through fast and nailing each part is done through speed and momentum that you earn, rather than just pressing a button. If you're blazing past sections of these levels, that's because you figured out how to get to a high speed in them. You learned the controls and mechanics and you are using them to the fullest. I don't think any other Sonic game demands what this game does for 100%, at least in the ones that I've fully completed. But that's what makes this one special. When I say this game requires perfection, it is mainly these levels. The other ones are great, don't get me wrong, but none really make you get this game down as much as the speed levels, and it absolutely gives you that perfection back. I think maybe once or twice something went wrong, but I will say that's because I would panic. I would be mashing buttons when the game has already instilled in me that there's a rhythm, and I refuse to follow it. The game asks for a lot more skill than you would normally expect, especially for a kid's game, but in these levels, it never puts you in a situation where it's impossible for you to reach those heights. It's the gameplay style that encourages improvement the most, so it absolutely makes sense that it not only is the strictest for A ranks, but it is the most fun to perfect. So I have now gotten all 180 emblems in Sonic Adventure 2 twice. And what do I have to show for it? I'm addicted to the Chao Garden, and I also have this Green Hill Zone level, which is pretty mid, but here's the thing. This is absolutely about the journey, not the destination. Green Hill is your victory lap, but what you accomplish before it is what matters. I don't think 100% completion in a lot of games is worth it or warranted, but in platformers, I tend to go for it. That's because I like to see everything a game has to offer me, and with a platformer, collecting everything, doing every challenge, that's how I get to see all of it. But with Sonic Adventure 2, it asks a lot more, not just beat every level, do it perfectly. Learn mechanics, potentially play differently than you ever would have before, and in doing that, it opens up a world that I never realized existed before I did it. I thought this game had aged a lot. I thought Sonic Adventure Adventure 1 was better, I thought my love for it as a kid was unwarranted. But ever since that original 180 Emblem playthrough, I have held this as a holy grail of Sonic games, up there as one of my favorites. I think as an adult, mastering what the game gives me and learning every level inside and out changed my perspective on each part of the game. For one of them, it made me hate it more, but for the rest, I truly found that this game is something special. It's aged, and I think pretending that it hasn't is stupid. There are moments that potentially, if they were made today, they would work a bit better. But considering that age and the series, it's kind of amazing how it gets better the more you dig, the more you get into the eccentricities and gameplay styles, rather than getting irritating or worse. I haven't 100% Shadow the Hedgehog, for example, because as someone who hates that game, I really don't think A ranks are going to make it any more palatable for me. So for my sake, don't watch this video, because I really don't want to make more of these if it means Shadow the Hedgehog eventually gets one. But this game, it's special. A lot of people have been making videos about 100%ing SA2. Videos I haven't seen yet, mind you, but their titles indicate how you probably shouldn't do it, how it's a huge undertaking that you shouldn't try. But honestly, especially if you have a history with this game, maybe you fell out of love with it, you should give it a try. There are so few games of this type that expect you to push it to its limits for 100%. So few that really show their full hands only when you dig this deep. But I truly think that if more people gave it a try, they would understand why I would much rather play this game than this game, and why I'd be willing to do this twice. Like again, I am epic. I did it twice because I'm better than you. But also, I wanted to prove that I'm not just taking from a 5-year-old experience, that whether it's fresh in my mind or not, I still enjoy this game's quality levels and challenging expectations. And I absolutely do. I think you will too. And I think getting all 180 emblems should stop being seen as this insane mountain that only a crazy person would climb, and instead be seen as a way to truly understand why this game is still so beloved and why it was never actually bad or anything like that. I think it will help you appreciate the good while realizing that the bad kind of drains away as you gain more knowledge. I think games like Sonic Adventure 1 and hell, other platformers have this quality too, but I don't think they have it to this extent, and I think more people should see it. But now I'm going in circles, so whether you're a based individual who's going to give it a shot or already has, or you're a pee-pee piss-piss whiny baby with no self-worth who isn't going to do it, I hope you know, I'm never coming back.